World Bank suspended any further loan processing for the government of Uganda due to the enactment of the Anti-Homosexuality Act. The total amount of money that is affected is about $5 billion. The big question is, do we really need $5 billion? The Inspector General of Government in a recent report indicated that we lose up to 23% of our budget every year due to corruption. That means that out of this $5 billion that we would have got, 23% would have been lost out of corruption, which is about $1 billion. In other words, we do not need the $5 billion. We just need about $4 billion. If you go further, there are some projects of roads I've seen whereby a Maram road has been rehabilitated at a cost of 80 million Uganda shillings per kilometer using World Bank money. If you go into the Ministry of Works indicative figures within the budget framework paper, it shows that each kilometer of Maram road only needs 40 million shillings. But in this case, it was 80 million shillings per kilometer. Twice, or rather 50% of the money went to other pockets itself. If we apply these statistics, it may then show that we may not need the $5 billion, but only 50% of it, which is $2.5 billion. Recently, the Minister of State for Water and Environment in a conference appealed to the people who are present that instead of eating 90% of the money, only eat 10% and let the 90% do the work. That shows that in some of these projects, many of which are funded by loans, up to 90% of the money is lost due to corruption. Only 10% goes to the work. That means, therefore, that out of the $5 billion, we will only have needed just 10% of it, which is $500 million. Now, the question then is, how much money can we then get if we look at other measures apart from this funding? The 23% that we lose every year due to corruption is 9.1 trillion. Let me show you what that money can do. We can be able to construct 1,000 health center trees in sub-counties across this country. Each health center tree costs 1 billion shillings, and it will have a maternity ward. So you total that up, that is 1 trillion Uganda shillings. We can be able to build 1,000 seat secondary schools across the country. Each seat secondary school costs 2 billion shillings. When you sum it up, that's about 2 trillion Uganda shillings. We can be able to pave 1,000 kilometers of roads that will end up being tarmacked in this country. Each kilometer costs 3.1 billion shillings, and when you add it up, that is 3.1 trillion shillings. We can also drill 10,000 boreholes in 10,000 villages. Each costs 20 million shillings, and that will be 2 trillion shillings. Add up all these figures, you'll come to just about 8 trillion Uganda shillings, and you'll still have 1 trillion Uganda shillings left. Uganda, we have the money with us. We don't need that $5 billion to effect service delivery in our country. Now, the big question then is, how can we be able to get this money and secure it for service delivery? It is very simple. We need to reduce the cost of development projects in this country by 50%. The cost of constructing a kilometer of a tarmac road in this country is 3.1 billion shillings. In Kenya, it's at 1.1 billion. In Rwanda, it is at 1 billion shillings. Why can't we do the same here? So just reduce the cost of infrastructure projects, the cost of development projects by half. Will be able to raise trillions of shillings and will not need the $5 billion, which only about 10% do the work. So the World Bank suspension is actually a suspension not of the loan, but a suspension of corruption. And it is an opportunity for us as a country not just to live within our means, but for the means to live